Okay, so I'm gonna start my timer, make sure I'm staying within the parameters. I believe we're supposed to do this in about 15 minutes. So I'm gonna start my stopwatch. Okay, so my name is Brandon, student at Hamline University. This is a summer course. This will be my presentation. And I'm currently in China. The internet is blocked and controlled. I have to use a VPN to access Google, and it doesn't always work. So sometimes I have restricted, limited access to the internet. Therefore, I'm going to make this video just in the event that for whatever reason I can't get online or I have some VPN connectivity issues. And I'm going to walk away from the camera towards the computer now so that I can click. So, the title of this presentation, what I want to review is teaching character education. Is it a waste of time? Is it something that can be done? Can we teach character in school? If so, how do we do it? Is it worthwhile? There is some debate on this issue, and that's what we're going to explore. Now, originally, my original topic was poverty, which I think is a very interesting issue, and I'm curious about how do students who maybe come from poorer households, what disadvantages might they face? Do they face any disadvantages? Can a poor person still succeed in school even if they have less advantages that might come with wealth? And also, what can schools do to help students avoid poverty in the future? For example, when I was a high school student, a long time ago, I think I had one economics course. I didn't really know much about credit cards, banks, the stock market, the nature of money, the history of money, the difference between fiat currency and a gold standard. I did not come out of high school knowing much about economics. That was what I looked into for my first stab at this, or for at least my paper. However, when it came to the presentation, I was not able to find a way to sort of satisfactorily transfer that information to a PPT, because I looked at the rubric and it wanted me to cover historical development and what else? Like different sides of the issue, and I didn't approach it that way. So I wasn't able to think of a way to make a presentation out of that topic, that paper. So I decided instead to cover something different that came from one of my interviews. I interviewed two men, two British men who teach English here in China from the UK. These are a few quotes from one of them. I might even just skip the second one, but a few things he said that resonated me and kind of inspired me to take this presentation in a different direction. Let's look at the first and the third. First thing he said during the course of our conversation was having a highly motivated personality can be more of an advantage than a higher socioeconomic status. Therefore, if you have the right attitude, the right motivation, you can still succeed, maybe not just in school, but in life. And then let's skip the second quote. Third, he said, education is less important than grit or determination. And I thought, you know what, that's interesting. Let's explore that. So, a couple questions. Is education less important than grit or determination, just in terms of overall success in life? And should and can schools teach grit, determination, and character? Now, maybe some schools do, but I think plenty of schools don't. I didn't have any sort of courses, again, when I was a student, that I think I could say taught me grit, character, anything like that. Now, we're going to look at some quotes. Dalai Lama: when educating the minds of our youth, we must not forget to educate their hearts. So, we have someone here from the East. Now we have someone from the West, Aristotle. educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. The best way to teach morality is to make it a habit with children, and education in morals will be found almost the whole that goes to make a good man. So, I think Dalai Lama, wise man from the East, Aristotle, wise man from the West, and essentially saying the same thing. So I think that's interesting. Now, we look at this woman who I am not too familiar with, but I wanted to get a woman and someone current, someone who's still, well, yes, Dalai Lama, still alive. But I came across this quote from Laura Moser, I believe is her name. She's an author, she's a politician, she's American, and unlike Aristotle, she's still alive. She said, "Grit can't be measured on pop quizzes, but it can often predict long-term success more than mere intelligence." And last but not least, President Bill Clinton in 1996, his State of the Union said, "I challenge all our schools to teach character education, to teach good values and good citizenship." So we're looking at 4 different people who, President of the United States, Aristotle, Dalai Lama, some people with some reputation, some credibility, promoting this idea. Now, one of the books I came across in my research is called How Children Succeed, Grit, Curiosity, and the Hidden Power of Character. The author's name is Paul Tough. And I have to point out, I think it's a little bit amusing that the author of a book about grit has the surname of Tough. Okay, so in the book How Children Succeed, the author explores what might be called the character hypothesis, which is the notion that non-cognitive skills like persistence, self-control, curiosity, conscientiousness, grit, and self-confidence are more crucial than sheer brain power to achieving success. I bought this book recently. I've read the first 2 or 3 chapters. It's excellent. So I'm going to read some notes. Some of this I'm pulling from some articles I found online. They'll be in my references. Let's see. So psychologists and neuroscientists have learned a lot in the past few decades, Tough writes. What they've discovered can be summed up in one sentence. Character is created by encountering and overcoming failure. In this book, Tough explains why American children, now this is interesting, from both ends of the socioeconomic spectrum are missing out on these essential experiences. The offspring of affluent parents are insulated from adversity, beginning with their baby-proof nurseries. Maybe I'll step in front of the camera a bit. I've been kind of camera shy. With their baby-proof nurseries, I lost my place, forgive me. Blah, 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 blah. Baby-proof nurseries and continuing well into their parentally financed young adulthoods. And while poor children face no end of challenges, from inadequate nutrition and medical care to dysfunctional schools and neighborhoods, there is often little support to help them turn these omnipresent obstacles into character-enhancing triumphs. The book illustrates the extremes of American childhood. For rich kids, a safety net drawn so tight it's a harness. For poor kids, almost nothing to break their fall. Interesting. Now let's move on. I think we're going to stick with this a little bit. Now, chapter 2 I thought was an interesting chapter of the book. It's titled How to Build Character. It discusses the KIPP, Knowledge is Power program that was founded in the South Bronx in 1999 by Mark Levine. So, the students were all black and Hispanic 8th graders, mostly from low-income families. On the 8th grade citywide achievement test in 1999, the students earned the highest scores of any school in the Bronx, as well as the 5th highest in all of New York City. Since then, more than 100 new KIPP charter schools have been created around the country. Most of the students, upon graduation, won admission to highly selective private or Catholic high schools, often with full scholarships. Now here's what's interesting. Almost every student from the 1999 class, I normally don't talk this fast, but I have time limits. Almost every student from the 1999 class did graduate from high school, and most of them enrolled in college, but 6 years later, only 21% of them had completed a 4-year college degree. Some students who did not complete college reported a gradual loss of ambition after being away from KIPP and its blast furnace of ambition. Now this is interesting. So as the dropout reports rolled in, not just from the first KIPP class, but from the second and third too, Levine noticed something curious. The students who persisted in college were not necessarily the ones who had excelled academically at KIPP. Instead, they seemed to be the ones who possessed certain other gifts. Skills like optimism and resilience and social agility. The qualities that Levine was noticing in his college graduates overlapped considerably with the set of abilities that James Heckman, interesting man, and other economists have identified as non-cognitive skills. But Levine liked to use a different term, character strengths. That's from page 52 in the book. Very good book. So, we have this man here, James Heckman. James Joseph Heckman was born in 1944. He is a Nobel Prize-winning American economist who is currently at the University of Chicago, where he's the Henry Schultz Distinguished, etc., etc. There's a lot of, he's got a lot of credentials. I don't have time to go into it, you can find it online, but he's very distinguished and Nobel Prize-winning economist, so he has some credibility. Now, there was an article I read called "If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich?" I'm going to read a little bit of it. So, how much is a child's future success determined by innate intelligence? Economist James Heckman says it is not what people think. He likes to ask educated non-scientists, especially politicians and policymakers, how much of the difference between people's income can be tied to IQ. Most guess around 25%, even 50%, he says. But the data suggests a much smaller influence. Guess. Okay, time's up. About 1 or 2%. Science doesn't have a definitive answer, although luck certainly plays a role. But another key factor is personality. He found financial success was correlated with conscientiousness, a personality trait marked by diligence, perseverance, and self-discipline. And I'll leave it at that for now because I want to make sure I'm getting through everything. I might have prepared too much, as I tend to do. Now the historical context is massive. There's no way, you can even see I put skip on these slides. There's just no way I can cover all this, especially with the time remaining. But there is a rich historical context. Again, through my research of this, I had no idea. I was actually surprised that that there's such a long history of schools in Western society teaching character, and not just academics, but virtue, self-control, things of that nature, things that we've been discussing. And again, I just don't have a lot of time to delve into it, but anyone who wants to read my notes or my slideshow, and I might incorporate this in my character, in my paper, can get some more details, because I just don't think I have the time. Now, arguments for teaching character in schools. I've listed 5 that I came across. Teaching values in school helps students learn and practice healthy attitudes and behavior, such as respect, honesty, and kindness. You know what? I don't think I have time to read those, so if you need to, you can pause it, take a look, but I gotta get through all this. So those are the arguments for. Pause the video if you like, read through them. Now these are some arguments against. Again, at this point, you can pause and read through them. I have about a minute left. I'm probably going to go over, and I want to get through all my stuff, all my material. So again, there are some arguments against. Now, this is something I find interesting. Japan definitely teaches character education. In Japan, if you've ever been, I have. I lived there for 3 years. Very polite society. Students, people are very considerate, well-disciplined, they do well in school, and the country attributes a lot of this to early childhood character education, and I can see it. Now, again, to what extent does this, and I'm sure there's other factors, influence their society? might be up for debate, as many things are, but I do think this is interesting to consider. I do like to learn about other countries. I don't have time to read this, you can pause it. Now, this is interesting. When we compare violent crime of Japan to the USA, and again, I'm operating under the assumption that most American schools don't do character, grit, things like that, and most or all Japanese schools do. Again, I'm sure I know there's exceptions, and maybe there's a few, schools that have some civics classes or something, but I don't think it's the same. I really don't. Now, if you compare the murder rate, the number of rapes and the number of assaults between Japan and the USA, it does make me wonder, what are the factors? I'm sure, again, there's multiple factors, but could character education be one of the factors? Again, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but look at the murder rate. 100,000 population, Japan, you get 506, United States, about 13,000. You can see the rape numbers, the assault numbers. I think we all agree these are horrendous crimes. Gap, that seems to be a popular word these days. So we're looking at something that maybe we could call a crime gap, and I'm interested in, well, what are the causes? And again, I'm sure there are multiple, but I wonder if character education might be one of those. Also right here, if you compare children out of school, primary school, 4,000 in Japan, about 1.76 million in the United States. Now, I'm out of time. I'm over my time, but I'm going to go through a quick few real-life examples at the suggestion of my colleague. He said I need to put in some real-life rags to riches, people who came from poor backgrounds. So here's a few. We've got Roman Abramovich. He was born into poverty, orphaned at age 2. Now he's worth $8.2 billion. Again, there might be several factors that play, but I would think personality, character, grit have a lot to do with it. Howard Schultz grew up in a housing complex for the poor, net worth $2.9 million. Oprah, we all know Oprah. No introduction is necessary. She's worth $3 billion. What have I learned from all this? Now I gotta wrap it up. I'm already over time. I apologize. What have I learned? Well, the first thing I learned is there is a lot of information about this topic. I was kind of surprised and overwhelmed by exactly how much information there is, especially when you get into the historical context. And again, I just don't have time to address it. But that is a fascinating thing. It can be in my notes, my paper. So that's something that I learned. The differences between Japan and the USA, I have some familiarity with, but I didn't know the exact specifics.